I've done many live presentations, but doing it on a PC screen is a new venture for me. And I'd like to pay tribute to Pat and Mike Cockett for all their work in facilitating this and all they've done for the Redhill and Reigate U3A during the pandemic. Now, my name's Tony Reason. I'm an ordinary bloke. I happened at the time of 2013 when I went to Base Camp Everest to be a 70-year-old having a late midlife crisis. So this is a story of my trek to base camp. I'm no Chris Bonington. I didn't summit Everest. And as people often remind me, I only went to base camp. You'll see a video. It's a low budget production. It's no David Lean blockbuster. It's a very personal account of my trek. And I'll tell you how and why I did it. We flew into Lukla, which you'll see on the video, a pretty scary flight. And then we trekked for 107 kilometers, 62 miles over 12 days. Our next climb was 2,700 meters, but there's something called Nepali Flat, where you go up and then plunge down into the next valley. So our actual climb exceeded 5,500 meters. Let's dispel with a couple of myths. There are no Yetis, at least I never saw any, and there is no rubbish. There might well be above the base camp when the serious climbers go up with their oxygen cylinders, but I saw no rubbish. During our trek, the first 2 days were unusually wet. There had been a cyclone in the Bay of Bengal. And we got to Namche Bazaar and we had to hole up for 36 hours because there was heavy, heavy snow at 4,000 meters. And there was a great risk that we wouldn't be allowed to go on. And that was my lowest point because I felt after all the preparation, we wouldn't be able to fulfill my dream of going to base camp. We were permitted the next day when the weather cleared, and the reward was amazing. Spectacular snow scenes, which you'll see on the video. The accommodation, well, that's pretty basic. So was the food. I was very, very careful about what I ate, and it was very monotonous, but it was very targeted. But for the good news for all of you that wanted to lose a pound or two, I can thoroughly recommend it to you because in 12 days, I lost about 7 pounds in body weight. Preparation was key. There's no preparation for altitude sickness, but there are a number of things going for you, and age was on my side. I had a fitness trainer, very specific training I did. I had a nutritionist who was amazing before, during, and after the trek, who guided me through all the carbohydrates and proteins. I had a psychologist, which happened to be my daughter, and she got me through the tough patches. And then, of course, there was my wife who allowed me to go. So why did I do it? Well, it would always been an ambition of mine, and I have to confess that a lot of people were saying, Tony, when are you going to do it and stop talking about it? And in January 2013, a number of things conspired. I was at a meeting and I met a friend who had just told me he had just come back from the Inca Trail in Peru, and I'd been there the year before as well. And I said, what's next? And he said, we've got a trip coming up to Everest Base Camp. I said, I'd always wanted to go. Leave it with me, he said. I think we may have a slot. At that very time, a very great friend of mine who I'd traveled quite a bit of the world with was in a hospice with motor neurone disease. I went and saw him and said I'd been offered a place to go to base camp. And I said, if I do it, I'll do it for you. A few days later, having thought about it, I booked the trip. I was going to see Malcolm that afternoon to tell him the good news. Meanwhile, his wife telephoned to say that he had died overnight. I did it, and I did it for him. Well, I hope you enjoy the movie. As I say, it's a home movie, it's a personal account, but just watch out for the flights, the porters, the bridges, and of course, the scenery. Hope you enjoy.
This is a video of biggest adventure to date. It concerns a trip to Nepal and a trek from Lukla to Everest Base Camp. Sit back and enjoy. 5 o'clock in the morning and the group are ready to go. And this is the official team photograph. There's our guide. This is the moment of truth, guys. This is when we're leaving Kathmandu Airport and we're going by the famous Yeti Airlines into Lukla and Everest Base Camp. Just checking to see whether they've got enough petrol. It looks like they have. So it's engines firing up, ready to roll. This is the entrance to the Sagarmatha National Park. Sagarmatha is Nepalese for Everest, and this is where we check in as we enter the national park area. Well, the next stage awaits, and there's a couple of real big crossings up into Namche Bazaar. Good luck. You're going to climb 400 meters. Well, as you've probably guessed, this is one of the bridges we're not going to cross today. Wherever you go up this trek to Everest Base Camp, you see these Buddhist symbols, their mantras from their religion. They're beautifully inscribed. It's still pouring with rain here on day 2. And we're just crossing one of the great ravines. There's the group going across. Now these porters, I've just spoken to one of these porters. He's 18 years of age, he's carrying 60 kilos for 2 days and will earn $50. This is one of the bigger loads I've seen. I should think it probably weighs in around 60 kilos. They are impressive loads these guys carry. Well, you see one giant load and then you're surpassed by another. There's the hotel we're staying at in Namche, the Snowland. And this is Namche High Street. And loading up the yaks. What a difference a day makes. Yesterday it was all rain and cloud. Today Namche's graced with these magnificent mountain backdrop. Well, we're about a quarter of an hour from the morning start above Namche, and already we're taking a break. The air is very thin, 64% oxygen here, but what a wonderful view. That's Namche Bazaar. Hello. Above Namche again, we look down in this massive gorge, and there you see the river below and a couple of bridges which I filmed on the way up. There were one bridge above the other bridge. The more I see these guys, the more I think of Pilgrim in John Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress. But these are not doing it for spiritual reasons, it's purely economic. So we're just 40 minutes out of Namche, and we've just turned the corner of this massive gorge, and we've got our first glimpse of Everest. It's just above the fern leaf. I'll zoom in on. It's the pyramid one. That, my friends, is our first glimpse of Everest. Another panorama, another stunning panorama. Everest there on the left, and our destination today is Tembouché, which is right on the edge of that black ridge up there. That's today's feat. We've got another 4 hours trekking and another 400 meters to gain. If any of you kind souls who sponsored me, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart, thought that this was going to be a Sunday afternoon walk, think again. We're at 3,800 meters above sea level, and we're going up a 600 meter climb. That's 600 meters in altitude. The air's getting rarer and the steps are getting steeper. Now, we've seen some yaks, but I'm assured that these are real yaks. Quite why they're real yaks, I don't know, but I'll try and find out. They're much more hairy than the ones we've seen hitherto. Hold on, we've got a problem coming up here. All the towns have a gateway, and we've just arrived at Teng Bosch. And this is Teng Bosch Gateway. Well, I'm standing in what masquerades as the square of Teng Bosch town, high up in the Himalayas, 3,857 meters above sea level. Fairly large monastery here, a very grand gateway. A few little lodges around which are all owned by the monastery. Down the bottom of the village you've got a bakery. Beyond it, the backdrop of the Himalayas, which are covered in mist at the moment. Everest is up there. An odd yak wandering around, and behind me, the lodge where we stayed overnight. This is a typical bedroom in one of our lodges. As you can see, it's pretty snug. There's not a lot in here apart from 2 beds. Certainly nothing else. Well, it's breakfast time at the lodge at Tenbosch, 7:30 in the morning. You can see the solitary heater that's heating this massive room. The temperatures are about 2 degrees C at the moment, and the party are all dining out in various styles. Some are being fairly abstemious with porridge and honey, whilst others are pigging out on full American breakfasts. This guy doesn't look very old. He's carrying a plywood sheet and 6 3-inch steel tubular poles. It must weigh a ton. This magnificent scenery. We're at about 3,900 meters above sea level, and what do we see below? Some terraced farming. They're very inventive up here. This is the village of Pangbosch, and some of the houses are quite smart and some are not so smart. This is subsistence living, but they do have a view. Well, this is a pile of yak dung that is used for fuel during the winter. That's the processed stuff. That's it in its original state, and here it is drying as little platters on the wall. There's really some amazing flora up here. We're about 3,800 meters above sea level, and it's really rich in vegetation. Another 200 meters we'll be above the vegetation line. We're at 4,100 meters now. We're pretty well above tree line. A little way to go before we get above vegetation line. And it won't be long before we get onto snow line. And surprise, surprise, here's the guy with the steel pipes again. Well, this is the watering hole, and this is how they get their energy. It's all solar power up here, nothing but. Today's lunch menu recommended is roast potato and boiled vegetables. We're told that will sustain us. It jolly well needs to. Well, we have a bit of a landslip here. The path's rather shaky, it's been giving way, and well, there's no way out. But we all made it. Well, there's our next port of call, Tenbosch, where we stay for a couple of nights. Quite a refuge. We're above the snow line, as you can see. We're at 4,200 meters, and we'll have a nice view from the bedroom window. Well, we just spent a rather chilly night here. It's been down to -8 degrees. But we're ready for a trek this morning, and we're just going to gain a bit of altitude to help acclimatise, and we're going up there somewhere. Well, today is a so-called rest day, but we're doing a 300-metre climb to prepare ourselves and acclimatise ourselves for the final push onto Everest Base Camp. So this, I remind you, is our rest day. Well, it's 8 AM. It's Saturday the 19th of October, and we're at 4,600 meters and just starting out on a 7-kilometer trek. As you can see, heavy snow here. The porters are making real light work of it and carrying something like 60 kilos. Spinning round, you can see this magnificent panorama It is just unbelievable. And just look at this stunning panorama. This morning we left Dengbosch right down there in the valley. It might look a bit like Piccadilly Circus up here, but you don't get a backdrop like this in WC1, I can tell you. Well, here we are right up in the high Himalayas, and all you can hear is the trickle of water, apart from the panting of breath. It's pretty rare up here. Well, it's Sunday the 20th of October. This is La Bouchée, and we're just leaving this place to go to Gorakshep and a push on to Everest Base Camp. Well, our next destination's in sight. That's Gorakshep. We're staying here the night, but this afternoon we've got to push on up into the glacier there. You can see the glacier, and base camp is tucked around behind that hill. Up beyond us you have the mountain Nukchi, and Everest is hiding right behind it. Well, we're fairly near now. We're 2 hours away, and the scenery is spectacular. We're at 5,300 meters now, and this is not an untypical climb. Large rocks, boulders, some of the steps are 2 feet high. It's very, very difficult, and 50% oxygen to boot. It seems to be endless, but I'm told we're within half an hour of base camp. This is the final push into Everest Base Camp, and we're told this is a pretty dangerous stretch. Above us we have rocks clinging on by their fingernails, just waiting to topple down as an avalanche. I better get moving. The ridge just before base camp, standing about 5'4", in fact higher than base camp. Down in the valley you can see some people down there. That is Everest Base Camp. Looks quite inauspicious. 5,364 meters above sea level. Towering above it, some mountains, and tucked behind the clouds, Everest itself. Well, it's 2:30, Sunday the 20th of October, and this is Base Camp Everest. It's pretty inauspicious. It's a pile of rocks, but the scenery around is anything but inauspicious. Well, as campsites go, this isn't much, but the reason it's here is because over there we've got the Khumbu Glacier and the Khumbu Icefall, and the mountaineers work their way round the lower part of the glacier until it gets to that rocky bit over there, and then they start in earnest. And up through that valley and beyond is Everest. Well, the last of the evening sun is catching the mountains in this spectacular panorama. Well, after 8 days of trekking and hitting Everest Base Camp, it's time to descend back down the mountain. And this is leaving Gorakshep, probably the highest accommodation in the world. 5,180 meters above sea level, and we're leaving this wonderful backdrop as well. Well, it's 4:30 and we're just walking into the village of Reigate, where we're due to stay the night. After an 8-hour trek, it's quite a welcoming sign. There's one hostel there that offers hot showers, and since, well, I can fairly admit we haven't had one for a few days, that sounds quite welcoming. We're at 4,100 metres above sea level. We're in a very cold bedroom, and Dell's just going to scratch the ice off the window pane. I remember it was like this when I was a kid, and here I am, 71, and we're still suffering. So we've down to about 3,800 metres on our way down, and suddenly we've come into a bakery up in the village, Tengbosch, and we're getting sorely tempted. Just look at this. Really shouldn't, but we will. This is Tengbosch on the way back, and this is by sunlight. The last time we saw it was in freezing cold, early morning conditions. There's the lodge we stayed in. I'll swing round, and we've just had lunch, and it was delightful in that bakery there. And I've just had a cinnamon bun. The first proper food I've had for 2 weeks. Well, this is sunset above Namche Bazaar on the way back, and this is the best view yet we've had of Everest in the evening sun. It is a wonderful sight. I give you Everest. This is a 10-minute rest before the final push into the lower base camp of Lukla. 25 minutes of steep ascent, and we're nearly there. Well, we've just arrived back after 12 grueling days going from Lukla up to Everest Base Camp. We've travelled some 60 miles on foot. We've ascended some 2,800 metres net. That's, in truth, that's probably nearer 5,000. Bearing in mind the up and down. We've endured temperatures from +20 to -10. It's been a marvellous experience, and now it's time to have a shower, a shave, and perhaps even a cold beer before we fly back into Kathmandu. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Well, we're back at Lukla. 12 days trekking, and they're all demob happy. A lot of hugging and kissing has been going on, and I rather suspect a few beers will follow. Now they are getting carried away. This is the CEO. This is the man that led us there. He counted us all out, and he's counted us all back.
Guys who cross there to fly there.